Welcome. I'm Dave Bazuki, founder and CEO at Roblox, and you're listening to Tech Talks, where we talk about everything that's happening at Roblox. We have a fast follow today. We're joined again by Matt Kaufman and Eliza Jacobs from our safety and civility team, hot on the release of age estimation, trusted connections, a slew of other things. We are going to give you a real-time update on how that big release went. We're going to dive into some new things we're releasing. We're going to chat a little about what we're doing with vigilantes on Roblox. We're going to go a little over the future of our AI platforms as well. So buckle up, sit back. We have a lot of information, and we'll give you an update on some of the open source AI tools that we've released as well. Matt, Eliza, thanks for jumping back in with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey, we just got back from Washington, D.C., where we were hanging with a lot of people sharing our vision and our safety roadmap. And we are live now with a bunch of tech we've been working on for a while, including trusted connections, facial age estimation, and more really health-related things for users on the platform. How has the release of age estimation gone? Are people using it? Is it doing what we're hoping it will do?
Yeah, I can start off with that. First of all, we launched something called Trusted Connections. We did that about a month ago. And what it is it's a way for our users who are 13 and over to have more authentic conversations with their friends and people they know in real life. And in order to access that, you have to go through a facial age estimation, which lets us take a picture of your face and you move your head around a little bit, and we can get a pretty good idea of how old you are. And that lets us ensure that the product is only available to our users who are 13 and over. And when we talk about more authentic conversations, what we mean by that is unfiltered chat, text chat, and unfiltered voice communication in our party system.
And I think you're saying it nicely, Matt. When I've been on TV, I've explained that up till now, for example, if you wanted to call me a butthead, you couldn't do that on Roblox. And there's a lot of 15-year-olds who we feel it's okay for them to call each other a butthead, and there's actually a deeper reason for allowing 15-year-olds to call each other a butthead on Roblox rather than anywhere else. Can you share, what our motivation is for that?
Maybe Eliza can talk about what's age appropriate.
Yeah. I think what we're always trying to do is have products that are age and developmentally appropriate for our users. So in this case, if you're calling your friend that you know in real life a butthead and they know that you're joking, but you've done that through facial age estimation and trusted connections, then we don't really think there's a safety risk there, right? Whereas if you're calling someone in a game server a butthead, maybe that's a bullying issue or a harassment issue. So we're really trying to be contextual in our policies and keep everyone safe, but also not prohibit things that are really developmentally appropriate for kids to be engaging in with their friends.
Yeah. And so with facial age estimation, we're not going to allow 11-year-olds to call each other a butthead. But there's another benefit that's really subtle, and I share this when I'm in DC. We are trying to keep people on our Roblox platform, not as much always because we're driving engagement, but there's some unique things about our platform. All the text, all the voice is filtered for critical harms. We don't allow real-time image sharing. And those are things where we may see people try to go off platforms when we don't want them to.
That's right. Yeah, we would prefer that people stay on Roblox and participate and talk with their friends on Roblox rather than going off platform. And so we're trying to make these contextual tools available to encourage that.
Arguably, Roblox has one of the most creative, passionate communities in the world. We have over 100 million daily active users. We did something that was arguably controversial because we're thinking about the future, where a feature that was really in the very first spec of Roblox almost 20 years ago, which was a feature called Friends. We renamed that to Connections and Trusted Connections. And I want to highlight there's a lot of back and forth inside the company around this. I believe it's really a great move for us. Do you guys want to riff on why we made that move? And I can add on some of my thoughts about it.
Sure, I can start. I think when we think about the generic term friends, what we realized it was being used on Roblox and honestly on other platforms to reflect people who you knew really well. They might be your childhood friend, and also somebody who you may have met once playing a game and you thought, maybe I'll just add you to a list. And we thought that that really wide spectrum of relationships wasn't really well described by the word friend. So we introduced the notion of trusted connections and then everybody else who's a regular connection. And this idea of trusted connections is we know more about the relationship between the two people. We know that both people have really opted into that and said, hey, like this is something that, I really want to become a trusted connection. I want to have more of this unfiltered free communication with. And so it just provides an extra level of transparency in those cases.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of people were, thinking that they have a lot of friends on Roblox, and we're not trying to get away from this. I think this stems from a future vision. Some of the people on Roblox are going to be my business associates, but not my friends. And some of them may be a parent or a sibling, or someone may be some other thing. So I think part of this is a future vision of having a wider taxonomy of the people and not really making any assumption about those relationships. Although we do realize the passionate community, this was a tough one, and we appreciate them understanding us. Hey, there's another thing that I think is going to be live when this goes live, and that's sensitive issues or sensitive topics. This one also took a lot of thought within the company, and we shared a bit on this whole notion that even in a very tight-knit community or in the United States or the world, for younger players, there is a range of topics that is almost like we can't find a unanimous decision on what's appropriate for them. Eliza, I know you led the charge on this and were very thoughtful. Can you share a bit more about the vision here?
Sure, yeah. This launch was really about giving parents more visibility and more choice into the things that our youngest users are engaging with on the platform. And one of the things we know about our community is, we have a global UGC community of creators that, as you said, are just explosively creative. But what that means is that for super sensitive topics, that families might have very different opinions on, or might want to approach with their kids in very sensitive ways. We just can't guarantee that that stuff is handled in a developmentally appropriate way on the platform. And so we're giving parents the choice to either enable access to games that are primarily themed on those topics or not. That's in the parental controls now. It's their default unavailable for U13s, just to start from a place, in our safety-centric vision of being a little bit more restrictive, and then let parents go in and change that if they feel for their family and for their kid. Roblox is the place to engage in any of these topics. And, we're not taking a stance on any of these topics, and we know that they can be handled in appropriate ways and in schools and with trusted adults. But we really want to put that power in the parents' hands.
And I think one of the things we really thought long and hard about inside the company is default on or default off, really, for younger users, whether the default behavior is, hey, go get your parent and allow you to see this, versus if parents don't like it, turn it off. We went with the former, really, which is, work with your parent to turn it on. I think that is where we came out as far as the most developmentally appropriate strategy here.
We're also super transparent with the community, and it'll say on the game page, the details page, why something is restricted, and it'll say, like, go ask your parent to change this setting and direct you to that setting. So we want to engender conversation between kids and parents, and as much as possible, have parents make educated choices about how their kids are engaging on the platform.
Cool. Well, let's move on and let's highlight first. Thank you all for participating in our communication with government, our senators, our legislators. When we go out and visit them, it's interesting because in the U.S., people imagine we're in a super partisan situation, but there's a universal truth, I think, in talking to every senator and every legislator, and that is let's figure out how to keep younger people safe on social media platforms. And we've supported California Age Appropriate Design Code. We're supporters of COPPA 2.0. We went out for the signing of the Take It Down. And one of the things we try to do in DC is share really what I would say are the three different flavors of social media and how they're all different. And I think legislators are reacting to some things, and we're going to riff into obviously vigilantes on Roblox that they see on those. I want to first start with a category, not Roblox where you play together and not short form video or video where you consume, but really image sharing and chat type platforms.
One way of looking at this is, I think a lot of the challenges that other messaging and social media platforms have had is that those platforms were built from the beginning for adults.
Yeah.
And over time, what they found is their audiences got younger, and then they tried to retrofit and they tried to add new restrictions. But it's been very challenging for them, and it's very challenging to address these things like catfishing and impersonation and things like that. Roblox, on the other hand, Dave, obviously, as you know, like from 20 plus years ago, there were kids on the platform back then, and so the ethos of how Roblox has been built with this understanding that there are kids and there are young adults on the platform. And so everything that we do from a safety perspective begins with that. So when we look at like what people can do when they're chatting with each other on Roblox, we talked about trusted connections. And so we talked about the fact that the only way to have unfiltered communication in a private space with somebody on Roblox is to go through the age estimation process. And then on top of that, we don't allow people to share images or video in those chats and in those, one-on-one conversations. And we did that and we began that way because we were really thinking about kids and young adults first.
Yeah, and I think we're really seeing the proliferation of some of this with AI also, right? It makes it much easier to do that kind of scamming and blackmailing at scale. And that can be really scary for families. But again, to Matt's point, because we have mostly filtered communication on the platform, except in the context of trusted connections, we don't allow image sharing. We're super aggressive with PII sharing and what we call directing users off platform because, again, we want to keep people in safe chat scenarios and not push them to platforms where those kinds of scams and cases can happen.
And highlighting that everyone in this area is trying to do the right thing would be Senators Cruz and Klobuchar with the Take It Down Act, which really is a law around deep fakes of compromising photos of yourself and the horror tragedy that can happen if those can't be taken down quickly. So we do see this bipartisan support for wise legislation around that. Generally, the FBI, law enforcement, and others is starting to raise a little caution about this activity. But can you share a little bit more about, we'll start on the video side of what's happening and how law enforcement's reacting to it?
Sure. We can talk about vigilantism and how that's evolved some on Roblox over the last year or two. Um, I want to start off by saying that both inside of Roblox, and I think that there are lots of people outside of Roblox who really have the best intentions and the welfare of our community at heart. We all want to keep Roblox safe. We share this view, and we know that there's members of our community who feel strongly about that too. And you know what? We welcome them in part of the dialogue about how to keep Roblox safer. And we have members of the community in these vigilante groups that started off in a really good place. They started off by saying like, hey, they're reporting on issues on Roblox. They're talking about how we could do better. And, we paid really careful attention. We looked at what they were saying. We looked at what they were reporting. And all of that went into our moderation system so that we could go and identify bad actors on the platform and take them off and bad content on the platform. But then we saw something change. What we saw is that some of these groups started engaging with the community in ways that violated our policies. And so let me explain like what that means. They would go and create accounts on Roblox claiming to be a child. And then they would enter into game servers and they would go and start asking everybody around them, how old are you? And they were seeking out adults. If you said that you were 12 or you said you were 7, they would just move on. But if you said that you were 25, then they would start engaging in conversations and they would try and use those conversations to simulate.
Matt, is this anecdotal? Because I know we have chat logs for all chat on Roblox and historical records. Are you able to kind of take a look at this stuff?
Yeah. So unlike other social media and communications platforms, we don't encrypt anything. And we have systems that are monitoring for this type of behavior. So we saw these actors, they're pretending to be kids, they're trying to find adults, And then what they're doing is they're trying to move the conversation as quickly as possible to other platforms that don't have the type of monitoring and policies that Roblox has. And then they were using that activity that happened on other platforms to create situations that they would then video, they would report to the police, and then only after would they let Roblox know. And there's a bunch of issues in here. Number one, the violation of our policies about being honest about how old you are. Number two, moving conversations off platform. And number three, waiting to tell Roblox when they identified violative behavior to come and tell us so we could take action. All of those things are against our policies. And all of those things make it more difficult for us to keep the platform safe. So while I think some of these groups started off in a really good place and they started off, really, and they still do really care about the community, the actions that they were taking were putting our community at greater risk and were violations of our policy.
Hey, Matt, a couple things to think about comprehensively. Behind the scenes, text conversation on Roblox is going through AI and detection and filtering. And arguably, the internal efforts at Roblox, not just with AI, but with our own teams and research teams, are obviously much larger, if not, orders of magnitude, what would be possible from an outside thing.
We have a large number of investigators that are looking for violative activity. We have over 100 different machine learning or AI pipelines that are running looking for activity. And we report a lot of stuff to law enforcement when we find stuff that crosses a line and becomes illegal. And, one of the things is when we report stuff to law enforcement, yes, we don't publicize that. And we don't publicize it mainly because we want law enforcement to make the decision about what is illegal and what is not. And we leave it up to them. We don't want to pass judgment on our own without getting law enforcement involved. And that's why we're quiet about those things.
Yeah, I would also add on the sort of policy violations on the platform and our concerns for the harm to the community. These actors that were coming on the platform, they were reaching out to dozens and dozens of people, and the vast majority of those people were not responding to those engagements, and frankly were harmed in that process, right? They were violating our policies. They were normalizing policy violations on the platform. They were harassing people and creeping them out, and we can't endorse harm and policy violations on the platform for any reason, even if it's well-intentioned. That's just not something that we want to allow on the platform. And the other piece is oftentimes the sort of evidence that was collected, the video evidence, was really difficult to verify, really difficult for us. And if law enforcement had to verify it, then they're talking about subpoenas. And so I think something that sometimes seems obvious to folks in the community really is just much more complicated on the back end. And we want to really arm law enforcement with the information that they need to do their job. And that's what we do when we engage with them.
I would urge caution for people who, try to assess what's going on just by what they see on social media here, because there's so much more going on behind the scenes of this.
I do want to go a little bit deeper into one of the things that Eliza was talking about, which is that oftentimes we see reports in the media of somebody saying, hey, there was this person on Roblox and here's what they did on another social media platform. Here's screenshots of like what they said in another place. We welcome all of those reports. All of those reports help us do a better job. But before we can act, we need to independently verify what we see. Now, activity that happens on Roblox, we can verify it. We have the logs, we have all kinds of data. But activity that happens on other platforms is problematic. It's problematic because sometimes that activity on the other platforms isn't violative of the other platform's standards. Not only that, oftentimes that is private communication that we don't have access to. And people say, well, gee, like, look, it's my screenshot. Like, why don't you trust me? I just took the screenshot. I'm sending it to you. But I would say, especially in today's world of generative AI content, you could imagine what might happen if we started acting on evidence that was presented to us that's collected on somebody else's platform. And we can't do that. That would be a significant risk to the community and a significant risk in particular to the most popular people on the community who end up being targets of this type of activity.
I think one could say the target would be imagining a family member, either 16-year-old or a 22-year-old who's on our platform, who maybe meets someone that seems too good to be true or too interested to be true. And, let's go chat somewhere else where we're not filtered and we can share pictures. And I think we have to think both be very thankful for everyone who participates in reporting bad actors, but we do have to think about what you would call those targets as well.
Yeah, we want to be really conscientious about the victims of these cases and make sure that their information is not shared. And also, we don't want to jump to conclusions before we have all the information. And one of the things I think we've seen is people being doxxed or swatted. And that is not acceptable either, right? Like, we want to let law enforcement do their job and do their investigation and pursue where there are true bad actors. But we don't want to let the internet mob sort of pile on folks before that investigation has been completed, right? So we're just really careful and really thoughtful about all about protecting the victims and working with law enforcement in a responsible way.
So Matt and Eliza, we're shipping stuff constantly on the safety civility team. The roadmap is very fast. Can you share why didn't we do this sooner on our policy issues around vigilanteism? Why didn't we do it the second we knew it?
I would maybe step back a little bit and think about like we run a large platform. So every day, more than 100 million users are on the platform. 6 billion messages are shared between users on the platform every day, hundreds of millions of hours of voice conversation. And we have systems in place to keep those activities safe. By the way, those activities also include people taking part in tens of millions of experiences. Millions of updates to those experiences happen every day. So we have systems in place to watch all of this activity. And there are some things, like we saw some of this vigilante behavior, and we decided to take, a slow approach to it and understand what was happening before we decided to act. The other thing is that activity was happening across a large number of accounts. So it wasn't just an account that was engaging in this. We saw lots of accounts engaging in it, and we wanted to understand how those accounts interrelated with each other. Because as you know, sometimes you have one bad actor, but they could have lots of different accounts. So we were monitoring all of that. And we were also thinking carefully about our policies and thinking carefully about making sure that like we had collected the evidence internally of the policy violations and we really understood what was happening before we acted. And I think that that speaks to what Eliza talked about, which is that we do have a very careful, thoughtful approach to these types of situations. And we like to gather all of the evidence before we make decisions.
Okay, so now I'll put you both on the spot because uh, your job, in a way, is one of the hardest jobs in the industry. And in football, the quarterback gets a lot of fame and glory, but people know the best teams have the best defense. And this is really hard because there's a lot of content and there's a lot of communication on Roblox and billions of hours of good stuff. And so we hear about Matt, you and Eliza, more from a defensive thing, although much of what we do is offensive. So the question is, are we doing enough? And is there more we can be doing?
I think there's always more we can be doing, and we will continue to evolve our policies and our products to respond to new threat vectors and new forms of abuse. And we're working now on a policy update around games that have intimate spaces in them. So that's things like bedrooms and bathrooms. We are really listening to our community to understand where are the good uses of that. We have lots of role playing games that have those kinds of spaces that are totally legit. And then we have some spaces where that's inviting some policy violating behavior. And so you'll see soon an update from us on that front. And we're also working on a community safety council. We really want to get this intel from invested members of the community, hear from them about what they're concerned about, trends that they're seeing on the platform. They're closest to it. And so ingesting that intel in a way that is really useful for our internal teams is something that we're working on spinning up. So stay tuned for more information on that as well.
There's always more that we can do. And one of the things that we've been thinking about lately is really our role within a larger industry of these online, gaming, social media, and communication platforms. Just to remind everybody is nearly every example of real critical harms that happen on the platform where somebody's health or safety is at risk, nearly every single one of them involves not just Roblox, but it involves other social media and messaging platforms. And like we talked about earlier, our policies of restricting types of communication on the platform are such that oftentimes what we see are people, bad actors, trying to move conversations to other platforms. And again, that's where, when people report bad things to us, sometimes it comes in screenshots of what happened on another platform. And so we feel like this is an opportunity for Roblox to really help with the entire industry, not just what's happening on Roblox. So we're doing three things. One, we're investing more in our partnerships with law enforcement agencies, public policy groups, parent groups, and other advisory organizations to help us understand how we can do a better job. That's number one. Number two is we're taking a much more proactive stance in open sourcing key technology that we have on the platform. So we open sourced our voice moderation model last year. And just recently, we open sourced a new model that helps with the detection of grooming and other types of harms that evolve over a long period of time. And the third thing we're doing is we are trying to set a standard for what safe communication means. And that's not just safe communication for kids, but it's also for teens. So that's why when we have unfiltered communication, unfiltered private communication on the platform, we require some type of age estimation before you can use that. And we hope that others in the industry will follow along with some of the standards that we're setting, because I think collectively we can make the entire internet much safer.
Okay, so now we'll take it to the next level and with some really difficult questions for our safety civility people. So, I can see some of our community naming experiences on Roblox and just say, take it down, take it down, take it down. I'd say examples could be Meep City, for example. Can you share, like, why should that be up? Should that be down? Like, what's up?
Yeah. I think one thing that's really challenging on this global immersive interactive platform is that we have content created by developers and creators and content created by the community, by the users that are in that game. And one thing that we really try to do is be fair to our developers and to not moderate them for the behavior of their users, right? That doesn't seem fair at all. Then we're taking a game down because users were in it behaving badly. And that would open up an abuse factor that would mean that any game that people didn't like the developer of or something, they could just flood it and behave badly and get the game taken down. So we don't want to open up that abuse factor. We want to be fair. But that being said, we understand that there are games that people feel like users are behaving badly in. So we're doing a few things. One is we're investing in what we're calling bad scenes detection, so that we can actually moderate in the moment those servers and take them down if users are behaving badly. And we also occasionally, if we find that there's a real preponderance of bad behavior in a game, we will reach out to the developer and work with them to make updates to the design of that game that we think will mitigate that harm. So we always want to work with our developers first and give them an opportunity to make changes to the design, and see if that works to mitigate bad behavior before we go any further in actually actioning the game for the
Hey,
behavior of the users.
So on bad scene detection, fully compliant avatars, fully compliant experiment, but maybe if we had an experiment where you could stack boxes on top of each other in a certain way or something like that, you could imagine, even though you're stacking boxes, something just not being too cool with, the
That's right.
image you tried to draw with those boxes. And so I think my interpretation is this is real-time detection of just fully content and communication being fine, but what happens in real time in that situation.
That's right. We proactively moderated all those elements, right? All the avatar items in the game, and we have content maturity ratings on the game, and all of that stuff is fine. But then we get into an actual server and someone does a drawing on a wall or organizes boxes in a shape. And that's the moment where the abuse has occurred, and that's what we want to catch with our new systems.
For a long time, we focused on moderating individuals. If you say something that's against our policies, or if you do something that we can tie back to you, we would moderate the user. We would also moderate content. Did the content meet our standards or not? And what we found is that when you bring lots of people together, sometimes it's very difficult to determine, like, the content might be all okay. The users, it's very hard to determine, like, well, what user is really responsible for the activity that's happening. So with our bad scenes detection, which we're starting to invest in, is we're saying, like, there might be a game server, a game running with, like 20 people or 30 people in it. And instead of trying to figure out who the one individual is who's causing the problem, we will just take down that one server, alert everybody to the fact that the behavior there was violative, and do that to be more proactive in addressing some of these issues. And we're just starting on that. I would say that it's a really complicated problem. We look at communication. We take screenshots of what's happening inside these games. We look at abuse reports. We look at audio if there's voice enabled. We look at all of these things in real time to try and make these determinations. And it's something that we're really excited about and investing in.
If I'm a regular user of Roblox and I want to go through Roblox channels, we have both trusted advisors, I believe, on moderation, as well as a way for users to do that. So what do I do if I'm a user, even if I want to report something? Is there a way that I can do that?
Yeah, so we have a trusted flagger program where we work with experts in the field, nonprofit groups, NGOs, civil society groups that are experts in various forms of online abuse. And they're in our trusted flagger program and they flag stuff to us and it gets expedited review by our moderation teams. So that's that program. But then users can flag anything that they see that is violative. They can flag usernames, they can flag games, they can flag all kinds of things. Let us know. The most important thing is that they provide as much information as possible in the report so that our teams can investigate it. That is really critical, right? Because again, we want to be fair to our community and make sure that we've observed the bad behavior, that we have evidence of it, and so that then we can tell folks when they've violated the policies, and also that there's always an avenue to appeal, so that if we've gotten it wrong, they can appeal and we can again take a look at that evidence. But either way, as a community member or as a member of Trusted Flagger, you can let us know.
Yeah, and I want to highlight, we're going to be getting into AI in just a second. Even if a very small subset of these issues are flagged by users, they create training data for our models to help us then automatically apply the virtual user standpoint to the same situation.
That's right. And one just thing I would add about the bad scenes detection that I think is important is one thing we've seen with voice nudges, where we time people out of voice when we detect that they're violating our policies, is it actually reduces the overall toxicity in that server. People stop doing the bad behavior when they've been nudged, or they leave the server and decide they don't want to participate anymore. But either way, the experience is better. So I think we're optimistic that bad scenes detection will do the same thing on the behavior level in various servers.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident at some point we're going to see some PhD thesis research written about civility on Roblox, and in a way, we're part of the fabric of society in nudging civil behavior. I spoke with an employee 2 days ago whose 9-year-old got a nudge from us, and they had a family conversation like, "Hey, I'm turned off on Roblox for a day." And I was first thinking the employee was going to go, we have a problem. But then they said, yeah, I talked with my kid and saw what they had been saying. And we had a discussion and they learned a lot from that. So I do think underneath all of this defensive action, I just want to say there's a lot of positive offense going on here as well. And I do want to invite, in addition to local law enforcement, the FBI, international law enforcement, the legislators and congresspeople and senators we work with really enjoy sharing and educating and giving an inside view of how we work here to help inform that. Could we ever imagine adding other people to the Trusted Flagger program or groups, for example?
I think we're always looking to expand the Trusted Flagger program. We do want to make sure that we have a really good signal to noise ratio, right? We want to get really quality information so that we can prioritize that information for our teams. And what we're looking for is people that have expertise in particular areas and can flag content, can flag trends, can flag things that we maybe haven't noticed yet in our systems. That being said, I think we're also looking at expanding ways that our community can flag things to us. So whether that's this community safety council we're thinking about, regular flagging on the platform, potentially prioritizing reports from high reputation users or power users of the platform who might have better information for us. There's all kinds of ways to evolve our flagging program to be more effectively ingesting information from the outside.
And Matt, following up on to some of our technology and AI, we have an enormously large and passionate and creative influencer community on Roblox, and they're all trying to make Roblox better, and we appreciate it. There's a video that sometimes we see, which is like, oh my gosh, how can this be on Roblox right now? How do you respond to that if we have all these safety systems and they can flag a video like that?
So like you, we appreciate people identifying those situations. But I would say it's a little bit ironic that that type of content is often shared on social media and video sharing platforms, and not moderated there. And so I think that really speaks to the fact that we hold ourselves to a very high standard when it comes to our policies around what is acceptable content and behavior on the policy. And we believe we really do stand out in the industry in how restrictive we are and how important we think it is to keep this type of content off the platform. We have teams and processes set up where we look at that stuff to try and understand whether it is truly violative of our policies. And if it is, how can we make our automated and review systems better so that it doesn't happen in the future?
Matt, you and Naren and others had this did a lot of work on our voice filter, and there was a time when we launched voice where the numbers weren't adding up, and we were launching voice and we were looking into human moderation of voice and the growth, and we were starting to think we couldn't scale voice on the platform. We thought we would have to limit it and turn it off, and then our AI team and the safety team literally went in a virtual dungeon for several weeks and came out with the innovation of our voice filter. Could you share a little about what that is and then what we've done with both Roost and open sourcing of that?
Sure. So last maybe 2 years ago, when we started introducing voice communication within game on the platform, we wanted a way to be able to moderate that in real time. And for what Eliza was talking about, really nudge users to what appropriate behavior is. For most people, it just takes a little bit of nudging in order to course correct and get them on a path which is more civil. And we had to figure out a way of doing that in real time. So we looked at a lot of the traditional voice moderation models that were out there. A lot of them, what they did was they would take voice, translate it to text, and then they would use the text in order to moderate. But what that really loses out is on like intonation and how people say stuff. And, there's a lot of data in there. So what we did is we built a model that goes straight from the actual voice communication, what people are saying, and comes back and is able to measure whether that it adheres to our policies or not. And we were so excited about the results from that model that we open sourced it. And I think what we're so interested in now, and like really what makes us pretty excited about our jobs, is we're hearing more and more about that model being used at other companies to keep people safe on other platforms. And that's really important for our overall safety initiatives because, as I said, keeping people safe on Roblox is really actually about keeping people safe across the entire internet.
I think that our voice model's been downloaded over 40,000 times. And a couple anecdotes. One anecdote, I was at a game developer conference event talking with a bunch of new company CEOs, and some of them had voice in their games, and they're just telling me, yes, of course, we're using the Roblox open source voice model. That sounded pretty good. Then I've heard recently another company that has had voice on their product for a while with a commercial voice model that swapped out our open source model because it was better, which I think highlights the capability we have to take all of this data and train really good things up. So stay tuned on that. I know we're part of Roost as well, consortium for that. And it's fun because it's not just voice and cube, which is our 3D gen model on Roblox anymore. We're moving to, I think, 4 open source models. Let's talk about the funny things that happen when any game or experience has text generation available or 3D generation available. And we know that when we use an AI prompt, we can get a lot of funky stuff out of the prompt. How do we manage both the vision of new types of gameplay, for example, talking to a virtual shopkeeper and buying some stuff, or generating various types of motorcycles for a game? How do we deal with that when some of the prompts may go astray? And obviously, I'm going to lead you into Roblox Guard, Matt, and wondering if you can talk a bit about that.
Sure. Before we get to Roblox Guard, I do want to talk about Roblox Sentinel,
Okay,
which is a
cool.
model that we open sourced just a couple of weeks ago. And what that model is for is it's looking for long-term behavior patterns which result in violations of our policies. So you could imagine, I might meet you, Dave, or meet somebody, and I might start off with like really casual conversations like, hey, how's your day? You want to go play this game? And slowly over time, that may evolve into something that's much more violative. It may evolve into moving that user to a different platform. Um, and those things are hard to detect in the moment because any one piece of text or communication that you see may seem perfectly fine. And the analogy that we use for it is like painting. Like if you have a paintbrush and you do one stroke of paint, it can seem totally fine. But if you look at an entire painting and you step back, the human eye is really good at saying like, oh, that's an impressionist painting versus that is a Renaissance painting when you see the entire thing. So what Roblox Sentinel does is it lets us take all types of data about communication, what games people are playing, who they're friends with, who they're inviting to be a friend and a connection with. It lets us take all of those things and look for anomalous behavior, which is like, you know what? This looks like something that's suspicious, that doesn't fit what an average user would be doing. And then we send that particular case to our human investigators. And what we found is that this approach has done a really good job of identifying bad actors just based on some of their initial behaviors. And it gives our intelligence teams more places to go to look for violators of our policy to remove them off the platform. So that's something we're really excited about as a new technology. And again, like our voice model, it's something that we've open sourced so other companies can take advantage of.
So we have
Yes.
our foundational cube model, we have our voice safety classifier, we have Sentinel, and now we'll jump forward to that. How do we manage when people have access to text gen and 3D gen in experience? Where I could imagine, um, in my younger days, I would have tried to get a lot of interesting things in that text stream or that 3D stream. So how do we control that?
Yeah, we from a policy perspective, at least, we think about it in sort of 3 different pillars. There's the prompt, right? What is the prompt policy violating? There is the output policy violating, and then is the combination policy violating. And actually, my team worked really closely with the Rogard team and all of our Foundation AI teams to do a lot of labeling, data labeling, and to bake our policies into these models.
Awesome. Okay, that has been a tour de force. We've given an update on all of our new stuff, trusted connections, age estimation. We dived into really, I think, an industry view on social media and vigilantism and just kind of how to think about keeping platforms safe, and everyone's a lot of good intention and balancing that. And then, of course, appreciate the update. Matt, Eliza, just want to once again thank you for arguably the two toughest jobs at Roblox and for joining me here today.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.